On this episode of Who Dem.
I spoke on the House floor about a totally different topic, but the guy who spoke before me, and I don't even know who it was a congressman from Florida. He's actually a freshman too, but I can't remember his name. But he was just talking about like how Donald Trump says he's going to do this, and now he's doing it. You know, he's fixing the economy. He's making life better for us. He's bringing manufacturing back, right? And it's just kind of reinforcing that message, even though none of it's true. Well, this week's been, what is it, Wednesday?
Yeah.
So this has been a weird week for work-wise. I guess the Republicans can't really get it together, right? So they canceled the energy and commerce markup. I think they canceled like 2 other markups. And so we're kind of like in a holding pattern. I don't have any hearings this week because they canceled them because they didn't really have a budget yet. So I guess it was supposed to be, Secretary Hegsworth was originally scheduled to come in this week for armed services.
Right.
But no budget. He couldn't come in, so that's been rescheduled. Mm-hmm. I think the president released a skinny budget the other day. Well, actually, he did release it the other day. Yeah, even in my other committee, small business, no hearings this week. So it's kind of just a bunch of meetings, really.
So the government isn't really, the legislative branch isn't running the way it should right now, is what you're saying.
I mean, there's still other markups kind of going on and stuff, but, you're seeing it in the news, right? It's not, that's it. They can't get everything together in order to do this reconciliation bill because they have too many different factions going in so many different directions that they can't come together to agree on anything.
Mm-hmm. And that is a massive bill you're talking about, the reconciliation package.
You know, according to the president, his one big beautiful bill, right?
Right. By Independence Day, he's gonna. I think that bill intends to. Yeah, this bill intends to.
And they want to have it done by Memorial Day.
I heard Independence Day, Memorial Day. That's wow. I mean, I don't think that's happening
unless they change it again. But Memorial Day was the original date.
Mm-hmm. And this bill is going to drastically decrease Medicaid. It's going to expand on the tax cuts of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Mm-hmm. And overall, it's projected to drastically increase the deficit, which historically has not been something that Republicans stand for.
Right. It's chatter, right? It's always been chatter. Would you say, Republicans don't do for this, they're for, small government, more efficiency. But every time if you go back and you look at it, every time the government's always gotten bigger, the debt's always gotten higher, every time they're in office, and it always ends in some kind of economic catastrophe, right? It's happened with, George H., George W., and Donald Trump.
Yeah, Republicans seem to have this, it's like persona they project. The American people are like, we're the old guys who are fiscally responsible and, we know how to do the economy. You can trust us. We're going to be smart with your money. Mm-hmm. And when has that actually ever happened?
It hasn't. Maybe when Eisenhower was president.
Yeah, right? Speaking of the economy, things are not... We have very clear evidence of the president just saying all of the quiet parts out loud about how bad things are going to get for the American people. Mm-hmm. Let's go first to this Meet the Press clip right here. Max is going to pull it up. Listen to this.
Well, maybe the children will have $2 instead of $30, and maybe the $2 will cost a couple of bucks more than they would normally. But we're not talking about something that we have to go out of our way. They have ships that are loaded up with stuff, much of which, not all of it, but much of which we don't need.
So this is in reaction to the mounting supply chain crisis that is happening as a result of Trump's tariffs, mm-hmm. where everything is going to be more expensive. And he seems to be okay with that.
Well, he's totally changing his tune now, right? Before he got elected and when he was coming in, we're going to get rich. I mean, this is not even a month ago. He's like, the country's going to get rich. We're all going to get rich. This is going to be the greatest thing ever. And now he's like, well, we're going to have to suck it up a little bit, right? It's going to be some tough economic times. And he's telling people it's going to be rough and tough right now because we're trying to do something that's just going to make it all better in the end. But we still don't really know what that is, right? He still keeps talking about trade deficits as if it's actual real money that we're losing. But again, it's just he doesn't know what the hell he's doing.
This is the problem of having a billionaire as your president, right? If the price of something goes down or goes up a lot, it doesn't really affect Trump.
Right.
It costs a little bit more to buy goods and services, retail.
Well, you think he goes to the grocery store? I mean, not obviously not now as president, right? You think he went before? You think he knew he knows how much eggs cost? He just knows how to order them and eat them.
He doesn't know jack shit about how 99% of this country lives, and that's the exact problem with this. For further evidence, you can go up to this port. This is the port of Los Angeles right now.
Mm-hmm.
One of the main points of entry for cargo that enters the United States.
Right.
Go to the next tab over there. This is East China. You can even zoom out a little bit. There's a massive decrease. The head of the LA port has already said that the shipping is down 30% compared to last year at this time.
Mm-hmm.
Our shelves are going to start being empty. The average thing and piece of retail that the American buys is going to be more expensive. And this has been the promise of America for the last 30, 40 years, right? Yeah. Since Reagan, since Bill Clinton, since the era of global trade. If anything else, even if jobs were shipped overseas, even if on average certain aspects of financial life were harder, at the very least, buying goods and services were cheap. At least the stores of our big retail giants, of our Targets across the country, were stocked, right? Well, and that promise is ending under Trump.
He got a lecture from, I guess the CEO of Walmart, the CEO of Target the other day, or last week, telling him things are going to be more expensive. Shelves are going to be empty. People aren't going to be able to get things for Christmas. Which you could see he's starting to kind of back off now, change his tune and back off on some of these tariffs. They said, right, but he still hasn't really kind of done a complete reversal, and he still hasn't. He's still claiming that he's going to put them back on after he took this. What was it? A 90-day pause. Yeah,
90-day pause, and he came out, I think, the other day, and said that we're doing a 10% tariff across the board, which is lower than a lot of CEOs and business leaders thought, but it's still something.
It's still a tariff, right?
And people are celebrating 10% tariffs as if it's not going to fuck up our supply chain and prices of goods and services in this country. So it's a travesty, and it's just yet another example of a Republican president, like we said, coming in and fucking up our economy, and there's going to be consequences for it.
Yeah, and the problem is he just kind of comes up with these ideas. Like this week, right? He's going to put 100% tariff on foreign films, movies made in foreign countries. Well, even actually, it could even be an American film that might be just have been shot in Canada, or maybe it was shot in the UK. But he wants to put 100% tariff. How
does that help anyone?
It doesn't. It's going to make movie prices more expensive, and the thing is, he doesn't discuss it with anybody because it caught all the movie, studios and everybody in that business off guard.
I don't think he likes Hollywood. I don't think he likes the people that you see walking around the streets of West Hollywood and Silver Lake and the rest of Los Angeles that go and make those movies. I think that's what it's about. I think his whole presidency is about going after his cultural enemies. It was the same thing back in 2017 when he left the Iran deal. What reason is there to leave the Iran deal?
Yeah.
It's a good negotiation. It ensures that a country that has been...
Well, it wasn't his idea, right? It was the same thing. Well, he got a big thing of silence when he said the infrastructure bill wasn't good. When he kind of said that during his State of the Union address. And everybody was like, huh? Because
whose idea was it? It was Obama's idea.
Well, it was Biden's, right? Biden was the one who got it
through.
The
Iran deal, yes, the infrastructure deal. Yeah.
You're talking about Iran. I'm talking about the infrastructure bill. But it's the same thing. It wasn't his idea. Neither one was. So therefore, it's a bad idea. It's not good, and it's a horrible thing.
Yeah. So it's about ego. I think that's pretty clear. What do you say to your Republican colleagues or even constituents or anyone when the subject of this new bill comes up, the great big bill that they're going to pass by Memorial Day?
It's usually just a smile and like, you guys going to get it together or what's going on? I mean, it's usually just small chatter like in the elevator or something, right? But what's going on? You guys going to get it together? Are we going to have something or what's the deal here? You know?
So, and these people, because obviously Republicans in public who are congressional representatives have a very hard time opposing anything that Trump is for. There's obviously drastic consequences for it. But is there any like behind the scenes chatter that maybe happens that leads you to think that maybe not everyone is on board with his agenda 100% compared to what we know see in the media?
I mean, you can see that in the papers. You can see through the fact that they're canceling committee hearings, committee markups. It's the fact that they can't get everybody on board to agree everything. And they're saying, there was an article the other day, right? Just like so many different factions have red lines that, you know, well, I'm not going to, if the Medicaid cuts are over this limit, I'm not going to support it. If we don't get the SALT tax, you know, expanded or raised to help like California and New Jersey and New York, then we're not going to vote for that bill. There's just so many different red lines out there. So many people trying to get something done here or to really just kind of, what's the right word here? But
unison?
Yeah, they can't come together because they have so many different factions and you know, Trump wants this, you know, this group wants this, you know, the Freedom Caucus wants that. And they're just being pulled in too many different directions and none of it is going to benefit the American people, you know, the working people of this country.
None of it does. And it's ludicrous to think that this bill with a 2-3 seat Republican majority in the House has a prayer of getting passed to where it's at right now, when the sole purpose is it essentially is a bill that's just for tax cuts and cuts to entitlement programs that people actually rely on. And that needs to be very clear. People need to know that. On top of an agenda that has already been about putting tariffs on other countries. It's the reason why I went to the store last week and the pair of running shoes that I buy for $50 is now $75. It was $74. That's a problem, right?
Yeah.
People are going to see that as we head into the midterm elections. I guess my question to you is, what more should be done on the Democratic side? Because right now, I think there was a poll that came out from MSNBC the other day. They were looking at, and I don't even know how this is still the case. They were looking at a poll of Americans that said who they thought would be doing a better job of president at this point. 45 said Trump and 43 said Kamala Harris, which is ridiculous to me. I don't know how any sane person can think that at this point. But to me,
I think, you know, that's his base, right? That's kind of, he kind of lives in that.
But it's not his base. It's 45% of the country.
But
that's a lot.
He lives kind of in that 40%, where his approval rating, I know it's down right now, and it's down, I think, it was 39.
He's in the gutter a lot right now. Absolutely right.
But I think for the longest time, he's lived at that thing. And look, there were people going to be, which is probably that percentage right there, that it doesn't matter. We're never, ever going to vote for Kamala or support her. And it didn't matter, you know, what she was proposing or what she was going to do. She was just never going to get that support.
I don't think it's that simple, though. I think that number is a product of the Democratic Party maybe not offering the best resistance thus far. I think Trump is shooting himself in the foot with everything that he's done as president. It's very clear that tariffs and the way he's handled our economy is unpopular. From my comprehension of it, maybe some people are happier with the way he's handled the border. That's one of the main reasons why he was elected. But I think across the board, there's recognition that what is happening with these deportations and with Abrego Garcia, that is unconstitutional and that cannot continue. And as a result, Trump is going to suffer political consequences from those things. But beyond that, I think there's less of a vision on the Democratic side that I've seen to counter that. In my opinion, what that needs to be is, yes, as Democrats, we see how things are bad and we're going to fix that. That means we're going to raise the minimum wage. It means that we're going to ensure that we have investments in domestic industry and we're not just relying on bullshit tariffs that don't actually do anything to incentivize domestic production.
Think that those things aren't being discussed or that they haven't been done? I just signed on to a bill yesterday to raise the minimum wage.
And I think the point is...
The thing is, they are being done. What you're not hearing about is you're just not hearing about them in the media. And again, which kind of takes me back to that, right? It's that they're not doing that, right? We are. I do kind of take offense when they say Democrats aren't doing anything, because I think we are.
Sure.
You know, I mean, one of the reasons we're doing this show, right, is to kind of show, to go out there and to kind of speak out and talk about the issues and to kind of get the message out there. But you know, this thing about like, oh, they're not doing anything, but we're never going to see these bills come to light, at least not in this Congress.
Of course not.
Right? That doesn't mean they're not being done. They're just not going to be brought up by a Republican majority in the House of Representatives. You know, I mean, what happened in the Senate yesterday, right? J.D. Vance, they tried to overturn the tariffs, right? And J.D. Vance had to come in and kind of, they had to be the tie-breaking vote. So they were able to get some Republicans to come over to their side in order to kind of take back control of the tariffs, at least on the Senate side, right? Which hopefully we could have got some people. I think there are some Republicans that are kind of favoring that too in the House.
Absolutely.
You know, we could have voted on that. But again, that's only going to be brought up if Mike Johnson kind of brings it up to the floor, which he never would have. He never will. You know, because he doesn't want to step on the president's toes. He doesn't want to upset the president. But I think we are doing things, right? We are doing things. We're out there talking. You saw we were out there on the steps talking about the issues, talking about what we're, what we want to do for the American people. It's out there.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of in the middle of both of these perspectives. I think that I'm speaking for the younger Democratic Party here. I think where the frustration comes from is more so with leadership. Like Chuck Schumer, he was on CNN the other day and he was asked kind of what are you doing? And he said that he sent a very strongly worded letter to Donald Trump. And I feel like, at least from my generation's perspective, that's like a little bit disheartening. I don't know that my generation knows that, there's not a lot that.
And I will ask what is it your generation wants to be done?
I think it's a little bit more of fieriness that I think my generation wants to see in particular. I can't speak on it being a particular policy issue. It could be, raising the minimum wage. It could be.
But you understand that we do want to raise the minimum wage. Like I just said, I signed on to a bill to raise the minimum wage. But that's not going to happen right now.
Absolutely. I think more so it's not about this particular policy. It is about like the way that the message is being delivered. And I think to your point, the Democrats are getting better at delivering their message, but I think it's just a difficult point of transition right now because you have Chuck Schumer saying like, oh, we're going to wait till Donald Trump gets to below 40%. We're going to wait till he gets below 40%. And while I do think that that's an effective strategy, I think that the problem is like the reality that Democrats are also unpopular. Like they're under 30%. And I think that Democrats are doing things right now and acting in the right way. I'm curious to think, talking about this media frenzy, do you think that it's also the fact that Donald Trump is, I don't know if it's purposeful, or I don't know if he's really just losing his mind, but he's talking about Alcatraz, and then he's talking about doing a tariff on films.
Yeah.
I think Steve Bannon referred to it as like overloading the.
I know he wants to flood the market to kind of take away from what they're really trying to do, but the problem is, I don't know I can't figure out what the hell is they're really trying to do,
Sure.
right? And I think he. The only thing I can come up with right now is that he is trying to distract from how bad things are going, right? So he comes and says like these crazy wild things like, oh, I told them to look into and we're going to reopen Alcatraz, right? Which there was an LA Times article about that, or actually maybe it was a Washington Post, right? But about how no, actually it was LA Times, where buildings are falling apart down there. There's no roof on this building. It's I don't know if you guys have ever been there, but it is. I mean, it's a tourist destination now, right? You take a ferry over there and you go look at it, and you kind of see where Al Capone used to stay.
It's a museum.
It is kind of. It's a national park now, right? But it is. It's. There's a reason why they closed it in 1962 or whatever year it was, because it was falling apart. Yeah. And so there was no need to do that, right? And so for his thing to say that he's opening it, it's just, I think, to distract from the fact that, okay, yeah, the economy's going to crap. We actually lost ground for, the first quarter, and he doesn't want to take responsibility for it, because when he came into office, he's trying to blame Biden now, but you've done all the things to kind of go and put it in this negative direction.
Yeah, that same Meet the Press interview we just watched, he said,
right,
all the good parts are me, and the bad parts, it's from Biden.
Yeah. But there are no good parts. What are the good parts?
Yeah. No. Well, the good parts are when he sinks the economy and then takes it back to the level that he had sunk it at before.
Which I don't even think it's done that yet.
Yeah, my question is, do you think that it actually is Donald Trump being this strategic genius and saying, I'm going to, or do you think that it's a bad case of ADHD? Do you think he's just stupid, for lack of better terms?
It's a combination of things there, right? There was the article in the Washington Post, right, was a different one. But it was another thing about how he distracts, and it was about how he kind of took over. They announced they're going to have the NFL draft in Washington, D.C. next year, right, on the Mall. And he kind of took over that interview, right, and kind of, basically because everything's going bad, it's like, oh, yeah, let me announce it. I mean, the president announcing the NFL draft, really, is that necessary?
That's also the same interview that he started talking about Alcatraz. And you see Roger Goodell in the background being like,
I know. And then he's talking about all these crazy things, and it's all about kind of distracting from what is actually going on. So it gets people's mind off the economy, and now they're like, oh, are we really going to, open Alcatraz back up?
Give them bread and circuses, as
so
the Romans
I don't
used to
know. It's either some kind of mad genius kind of thing that he's got going on to kind of distract, or he's really kind of lost his mind. Yeah, and I don't know which one it is.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter. The reality is prices are going up for Americans. We can sit here and yammer about how, it's weird and just random as fuck that he's opening up Alcatraz. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that thing, right, is the thing you can't avoid, though, when you're going to look. Talk was in that cabinet meeting, him talking about the, maybe he's exaggerating, like, oh, well, they can't get $30 anymore. Now they got to get $2. But the reality is, people are going to have to spend more for gifts, right?
Do I want to spend more for gifts, for food, for basic household items, for everything?
For everything, right? For the Christmas, he's talking about Christmas, right? It's for Christmas. Gifts are going to be more expensive, so it's going to be harder on families. There's going to be more of a sacrifice. They're not going to be able to do what they were able to do last year under the Biden economy. Is basically what the message that I kind of read into it, and so now he's trying to kind of backpedal on this. This was going to be great, but he right away he kind of said when he came into office, the economy is going to be great. We're all going to get rich, and now he's like backpedaling on that, and he's kind of trying to put it out there that, well, these are just the sacrifices we're going to have to make in order to get everything back, on track. But everything was on track. Unemployment was low. Inflation was going down. The stock market was going up. People were working, and he, based it on this thing like, well, we need to raise tariffs. Like we have these these trade deficits that are going, right. And he's not focused on the right things. He's not focused on the right things. And by focusing on the wrong things, he's put us in a downward spiral that could be possibly a self-inflicted recession.
Yeah, I think it's hard to know as someone who's young and just coming into the workforce what to make of numbers like that, though, because and as an economics major graduating
Well, you
this
should be.
right now,
This should be right up your alley
then
here.
it's like, yeah, you look at unemployment, right? Prices don't go down, right? But unemployment or inflation stops at the rate it is, which did happen. It was really high in 2022, and then it tapered off. So more or less, when you look at the numbers, inflation, the crisis was solved. And then you look at overall unemployment and GDP growth in the economy. And yes, a lot of the main aggregate numbers that economists like to point to were doing well by the end of Biden's term. But then you look at it on other levels, and it's also easy to understand why people are either upset or looking for change when it comes to our economy. It's harder and harder to buy a home than it ever has been.
Right.
Wages have also been more stagnant, even for high-skilled labor. Many of my friends in college right now that I'm about to graduate with are having a very hard time finding a job, and whether that's because of the AI crisis or just overall shifts in the economy, being able to afford living in a city where they can take a job is a challenge for a lot of people. And this is just my anecdotal perspective in regards to the whole rest of the country that isn't just young adults. I'm sure the story is more or less the same. So I guess my point is that I think when people look at an election and who are they are going to decide for, I very much understand the appetite for massive change. And right last year when we had the election, Kamala Harris didn't really deviate from Biden's mission, more or less some. There were a few issues. I really liked her proposal on helping subsidize first-time home buyers. I think that was great. But there wasn't a massive change. Trump, on the other hand, he was brash and idiotic. During this entire campaign season, he talked about putting these higher tariffs on Chinese goods, which just doesn't make sense to anyone with a 90 IQ who also wants prices to go down, right? But people bought that. And so from my perspective, I would go out and say that, like, for example, when we had the conversation with Cenk a couple weeks ago, his proposals on the minimum wage, which I did not hear about this bill that you co-sponsored in terms of raising it. If that's something that the Democrats have been supportive of recently, then that's amazing.
I think Democrats have
Yes.
always been supportive of raising the minimum wage, right? That's
Yes
why.
and no.
That's
I mean-
why. You know, one of the things, and I think we've talked about this before, but
Yeah.
one of the things President Biden did was he actually did raise the minimum wage for federal employees to $15 while he was in office, and that had Democratic support. I think every Congress, there was a Democratic bill to raise the minimum wage.
Right. So
So it's not like this isn't like an idea that we don't support.
I'll tell you why that it's something that I have this perception, because I remember what you're talking. There was a meeting between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden when Joe Biden got the nominee in 2020. And basically Bernie and Biden tried to agree on some of Sanders's initiatives that they could have mutual agreement on that would lead Sanders' supporters to go and support Biden in the general election. And the main one they came to the agreement on was establishing a federal $15 minimum wage. And then we go to the era when they were trying to pass the Build Back Better Act. And they had that provision in the bill. And this was one of the things that Joe Manchin was very much against. And
Right.
he disagreed with it. And it was part of the reasons why he ended up killing that bill. And I guess from my perspective, if I'm Joe Biden, I would have fought a little harder. I would have either gone to West Virginia and campaigned against Joe Manchin and been like, you, as Joe Manchin's constituents, could benefit greatly from this, yet he's voting against it, against your best interests. And he wouldn't have that, or he didn't have any messaging that was close to that. And that's why I thought it was a virtue signal.
Here's the politics of it,
Sure.
right? And look, politics, I think, always kind of in a way gets in the way of progress
Sure.
of things. You needed, in the Senate, right, they needed Joe Manchin, right?
Yeah.
Because even though as conservative or whatever, and how he was on the wrong side of some of these ideas, and that kind of being one of them, and the other one kind of being the environment, he's still a Democrat.
Right.
And the fact that he was a Democrat was what allowed, the Democrats at that time to kind of control the Senate. And now it just wasn't him; it was the other one too from Arizona. Kyrsten Sinema, right? Who kind of did the same thing, and they knew that they had this kind of power in order because they needed them in order to maintain the Democratic majority in the Senate. And so they were kind of able to kind of do that. So, I mean, the fact was, right, any other Democrat that was going to run in West Virginia, other than Manchin, was going to lose. And that happened, right? Because when he decided not to run again, he wasn't going to seek re-election.
Yeah, well, we had a Republican win by like 30 points last time.
Yeah, so now West Virginia is what? It's a Republican. They have that seat is now a Republican seat. So, I mean, that's just kind of the politics that kind of play in there, right? So he's not going to go out and campaign against Joe Manchin because they needed Joe Manchin. And obviously they probably would have preferred if Joe Manchin actually ran again, just the fact to kind of keep that seat Democratic.
I'm sure. And look, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and disagree that Joe Manchin isn't orders of magnitude better than whatever Republican gets elected for that seat. I guess my point for that story is just to illustrate why someone who's trying to evaluate the Democratic Party's support of the issue of raising the minimum wage might have some apprehensions. That being said, the situation we're talking about, right? Joe Manchin in 2022 voting against it, it wasn't all bad, right? We ended up getting the Inflation Reduction Act, which was probably one of the best pieces of legislative accomplishments of this century so far.
Right.
And it sure as hell did a lot to invest in American jobs and our economy and planning for the future more than anything that whatever this piece of shit reconciliation package is going to do right now. I understand that. And I understand that politics has to be played right sometimes.
Yeah. I
just sometimes think that it doesn't always need to seep its way into the messaging. Maybe that's a naive take. I could be wrong. That's just my perspective on it.
Yeah, I don't know what Manchin's reasons were why he didn't support that, or why somehow the people of West Virginia didn't want that. I don't know, but I think politics are regional, right? And the thing we always tell everybody is you got to vote your district.
Sure.
Because a district in West Virginia or in Maine or in California or Texas, is going to be, they're not copycats, right? They're not all the same. They're different. And so, a Democrat, like I used to say the first time around, right, when I was here, and I my district the first time I was in Congress was very purple, right? We flipped it, and then it kind of flipped back. Yeah. But, I said, look, I could go to AOC's district and win there as a Democrat. She couldn't come to mine and win. She wouldn't have won.
I remember that district. Yes, yeah. Young Kim's district now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conservative people in Orange County.
So you got to vote your district, right? You have to vote your area and the people that you represent and kind of do that. And I know that frustrates people because they're like, well, they're not being core to the democratic values. I mean, they're being core to the democratic values. It's just, people just are disagreeing on this issue that, these one or two issues that are not there or that they don't agree with.
And let's be real for a second, too. As much problems as the Democratic Party has with this, the Republican Party has astronomically more problems with actually representing their people. Because let's talk about the Inflation Reduction Act again for a second. Not a single Republican voted for that bill. And then you have Republicans who are in rural Louisiana, South Carolina, areas of this country that are greatly benefiting from that bill, are getting battery plants because of that bill, touting these achievements.
the old ball coach, Tuberville, spoke out against that bill. But every time his state got money, he was right there touting, how much money he brought back to the state. Well, actually, he didn't, because you didn't vote for the bill.
Bro.
You didn't vote for it. And actually now they're they're looking into him. Does he actually even live in Alabama? know. So I don't even think he owns a house in Alabama. But well.
Yeah. No, it's a shame. I wish that politics weren't always such a big player in these messages. I guess going to college in this town, you start to understand a little bit. I'm sure it's been a factor in your political career. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess what I wonder in having this conversation is, has there been a moment for you as a legislator where you think politics have prevented you from either voting your interests or voting the interest of your constituents?
I think I've always been kind of upfront, right? That the people kind of, this is where I stand on the issues and this is where they're kind of going to go. Now, look, there's issues sometimes that are kind of like, you can go either way, right? So I think on those things, it's kind of more, this is what I'm hearing from the district. I'm going to go in that direction, right? Mm-hmm. And look, and it's not the core issues, right? I mean, obviously, I want immigration reform, right? I want to protect healthcare. I want to protect the environment. I'm going to support our military, support our veterans. Those issues aren't going to change one way or the other, right? That's who I am, and those are the things that I am going to do, and I will always kind of be there on those issues. Protecting democracy, another one, right? But, I think sometimes there are kind of like just kind of novelty kind of issues that kind of come out there. They try and get you like on and Republicans are actually really good at this, right? I call them like gotcha votes, something that they can say like, oh, well, you don't support law enforcement, which is, there's already a law in the books kind of, there's already a law on the books on what we're voting on, but yet they want to do something else and do it again so that they can say, well, Democrats didn't vote for this bill, so they don't support law enforcement. But there already is a bill there, right? So sometimes you kind of just go in the other direction, like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to show I support law enforcement. This is the way I got to do it. Then, okay, I'll vote for this bill, even though it just kind of, it's doing the same thing that it's already being done.
Time for a quick message from our sponsors.
This episode of Who Dem is brought to you by Elect Dems Now. We all know that podcasts are the future. They give us the chance to connect with our elected officials like never before. That's why Elect Dems Now is committed to helping voters engage with the people who represent us. Supporting organizations that bring us closer to our representatives is crucial to advancing and advocating for the change we want to see. Whether it's $5 or $50, every donation to Elect Dems Now helps shape our future and ensures a country we can all be proud of. Your support sends a clear message to candidates and elected officials. Connecting with you means connecting with America. To contribute and make a difference, visit electdemsnow.org today. Your donation helps build a world where we are all connected. Paid for by Elect Dems Now, electdemsnow.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee.
I have another question here.
Yeah.
I agree. And I the example that I think of, because I'm from Georgia, is the Lake and Riley Act, where you name the act that takes away due process from Americans after a woman that was brutally murdered on the campus of the University of Georgia. Right. And now Senator John Ossoff and Senator Warnock, not saying that they don't agree with the bill, because I genuinely don't know their position, but what can you do but not vote for the bill? Because that the talking point's going to be, John Ossoff and Warnock, they support illegal immigrants, and they're for the murder of this girl, and they didn't support the Lake and Riley Act. It's named after her. How could you not support it? Right. And then I think immediately back to I think it was Merrick Garland who Obama was trying to get in at the end of his, not even at the end of his term, if you compare it to what they did with Amy Coney Barrett, where it's literally a couple days before the election they decide. Republicans are good at bullying. Mm-hmm. They're great at it. They're wonderful. They're masterful. If you see it on social media, on Twitter, their propaganda, frankly, because there's not a better word for it, is masterful. So my question is, what does the Democratic party have to do? Because I agree with you. I think that the positions that the Democratic Party takes is popular. I think that the media coverage could be better. Is that the route to take? Is it making your messaging more or making our messaging, frankly, more media friendly, or is it switch? Like, what would be your solution if you could go in and say, put me in, coach, this is what I think the Democratic Party should do?
I think sometimes if you look at Donald Trump, right, he keeps it very simple. It's like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to fix the economy. I'm going to fix inflation. I'm going to end the war in Ukraine. I'm going to make peace in the Middle East, right? He doesn't really go into details. and I don't know why, but people just kind of are fine with that, with him kind of just saying what he says and like, oh yeah, he says he's going to make the economy better, right? He's going to bring back manufacturing to the United States, and he's going to do it with tariffs, which, not even kind of explain. People just kind of, for him, take that as to there. And look, I think sometimes maybe we just got to kind of simplify our message there to kind of make it kind of more relatable and more simple.
Well, they're new ideas.
But
right?
at the other time, I think, there's people in the Democratic Party too that don't want that, right? That are going to ask like, well, explain that. So then we kind of get into these explanations, which now it becomes a more complicated answer, and it just kind of muddies the waters. So
Republicans don't ask for explanations, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever heard them? It's like, I mean, they're all like, oh yeah, he says he's going to do this, right? Donald Trump says he's going to do this. I mean, obviously, like I spoke on the House floor about a totally different topic, but I spoke about our art competition we had in our winter. But the guy who spoke before me, and I don't even know who it was a congressman from Florida. He's actually a freshman too, but I can't remember his name. But he was just talking about like how Donald Trump says he's going to do this, and now he's doing it. He's fixing the economy. He's making life better for us. He's bringing manufacturing back, right? And it's just kind of reinforcing that message, even though none of it's true. Right? There's no manufacturing coming back. Hey, what manufacturing has he brought back already? But every time Trump talks about it, he's like, "Oh, it's happening already. It's already happening. Things are getting better, even though the economy's going in the crapper." Right? It's like this is exactly how we wanted it, and it's getting better. But nobody ever asked him. Nobody from his party is going to challenge him and say like, "Hey, really? Explain to us how it's getting better," because he can't.
The good parts are from me. The bad parts are from Biden, right? That's all there is left to say.
Yeah.
I'm actually curious if you can pull up, see if there's any polls that have been done on if people regret their vote and what percentage of people that voted for Trump, like if they regret it. Because like I agree with you, right? Republicans don't ask a lot of questions. They don't really like explanations. They like new ideas. Mm-hmm. They like these concepts, and especially Trump's voter base, right? Because they're not with the rhinos, like the old establishment guard of the Republicans that were the pro-business and the tax cuts and the global trade and the empower corporate America kind of Republicans. Not that Trump isn't some of those things, but Trump is not those people. He doesn't speak like them. He doesn't act like them. And as a result, I think he's attracted this base that loves him for his novelty, loves him for his ideas that, we're gonna have the best solution for peace in Ukraine, and we're gonna bring in
trade it's like the first time he ran, right? He's like, he's not a traditional politician. He just speaks off whatever comes to his mind. He just says it, and it's gotten to the point now where it's. I mean, before they were always defending him, and it's like, well, he didn't really mean that. He didn't really mean it. Now they don't even defend him anymore. It's just kind of that. Well, that's just who he is.
And also, this time, his cabinet and the people he has around him are very different, right?
Oh my God! They're all yes people.
This time, it's all yes people. Like, it's crazy to think about how the Steve Mnuchins and the Rex Tillersons of the world were holding up the country in the first term. Obviously, that's not happening this time around, and it's a very different story because no one's going to say no to him. You don't have someone like Steve Mnuchin being like, actually, maybe let's not tank the economy, right? That's not happening anymore. That's the world we're living in. It's a poll we got here now. Who's this from? Newsweek. U.S. Amnesty, 26% of Trump's 2024 voters have at least some concerns about their choice, though notably the majority, 74%, are still confident in their vote. I'm not a math guy, but I mean, 1 in 4 sounds like I don't know. If like every 3-4 friends I made and one of them later was like, actually, I don't know if I can trust that guy. I don't know if I would be very happy with myself morally if that's how people thought about me. I would think of myself as a dishonest person if that's the way it worked.
I mean, I think it's still kind of early for this, right? It's only been 3 months.
It's early, but
I mean,
as
look
I said
at
earlier,
the paragraph below there, right? Only 2% wish they could have voted differently. So
yeah,
it is, like it's still early, and I think it's over time, right? I think in the midterms in 2018, obviously there was a big Democratic wave because people regretted their vote for Trump the first time. But he was, for whatever reason, he was able to kind of do it again and kind of win back people's confidence. But I think the other part too, right, is we got to look at it. If you look at Obama was able to bring people out, right, in record numbers. He did it in 8, he did it in 12.
Yeah.
Trump isn't bringing out people in record numbers. If the people who voted for Obama came out and voted for Hillary in 2016, Trump never would have won.
You're right, but
right. And the same thing, look, I don't think the vice president either, Kamala Harris, really inspired people to kind of come out in those numbers either. You need that inspirational leader to kind of do that, right? And I will say, look, I think, people are down on the leadership in the Democratic Party, but there's not that one charismatic leader out there that's kind of going. And look, I think Hakeem Jeffries is great, and I think he's going to do us well, and I'm rooting for him. He's going to be Speaker of the House one day, and I think he's going to lead the House Democrats in that direction where we need to go. But, there's a reason, I think, why you keep hearing about people talking about Stephen A. Smith, right, as kind of being the Democratic nominee, as ridiculous as that sounds. Even I think he kind of agrees it's ridiculous, right? But he's kind of, okay, is this what we got to do to take it back? I got to come out here and be there. And
I don't even know if he would run as a Democrat either, which is the
he said he would run as a Democrat in an interview. They had him on CNN the other day, and I definitely do think that it is indicative, and even polling on who best represents the Democratic Party. You look at the numbers, it's I think it's AOC, Bernie Sanders, and they're but it's 10% among everyone. It's 4 or 5, 6 different people that it's 10%.
Yeah.
And I think that does kind of show kind of what I was getting at earlier, where you're right. I think the Democratic Party is kind of in need of a charismatic leader. And I would, second what you said earlier, where it's kind of also this idea that once the Republicans get something in their head, it's in their head. Once there was voter fraud in the election, there was voter fraud. There's no convincing them. Once, we need to rebuild Alcatraz, no one's going to stop him. Once Trump gets that idea in his head, he's going to do it. And I feel I guess what my
the Senate parliamentarian doesn't stop them from doing anything.
No, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop them from doing anything. And I think that maybe a little bit of the displeasure that we were talking about earlier has come from Democrats being too rational, reasonable. We're just agreeable people. They're okay, cool. Well, we want to pass this bill. You guys don't want a $15 minimum wage in it. To get the other things in it, we'll go ahead and concede on that point. But Republicans are the opposite. They will never, ever concede anything.
Look, this is not, and it's not that Republicans aren't conceding, right? It's the Trump way or the highway, right? So it's not like they're not conceding, right? He's not conceding. And it's either you get on board, or you know what? I got somebody right behind you who will do what I want him to do, who I'm going to support to run against you. And that's what it's become.
Yeah, I think that they did a similar thing though with Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. It kind of was tied into Trump, but Mitch McConnell was, as much as I disagree with him and do think that he is Darth Vader, he was good at just being this is what we're going to do, and we're going to do it. I think back to blocking Merrick Garland and just like the hypocrisy there, where
Yeah.
Lindsey Graham says like, if a Republican was ever to come up for, if a Republican president had the same opportunity, we'd never vote for that.
Oh no, I mean the only thing there, right, is they just were flat out lying. They didn't want to do it, right? But like you said, right, as soon as the RGB, right, as soon as she passed away, it's like boom, let's get it going, because they had the majority in the Senate, and they had a Republican president, and and Mitch McConnell, I think when he was on 60 Minutes, his rationale was, well, Democrats would have did the same thing, which I don't believe they would have.
No, I
right?
don't think so.
I don't think they would have. They would have, they would have kind of fought and kind of did this, or maybe they kind of wouldn't have voted, but they wouldn't have actually stopped.
Well, we don't need to have a hypothetical. We saw
Right.
it with Obama. Democrats did not, in fact, do the same thing. They were like, okay, you guys aren't going to let Merrick Garland come through? Fine.
Well,
But I'm saying, if you had a
didn't have
Republican
majority.
president and a Democratic Senate,
Oh, okay, I see.
they would still go through the process, right? Now, would they have actually voted for the person? Maybe not, kind of depending on their views, but it would have at least maybe kind of forced a more maybe moderate kind of individual than somebody like Kavanaugh or the other
Amy
one.
Coney Barrett.
Yeah, Barrett there, to kind of go and become the hardliners, right? Which even them, some of the things, right, they're not even agreeing with him on some of these things.
Yeah, I was going to say, I used to think the
Supreme
Supreme Court was going to be our biggest problem going forward, and it's not. It's the executive branch.
Yeah.
It turns out the president actually doesn't have to listen to the courts.
No, that's not true.
Really?
But, but the thing is, right, it's like he's not listening
said
to
it.
the courts.
Look.
Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States?
I don't know. I have to respond by.
That was a little too fast.
Numbers that you're talking about. Don't you need to uphold the Constitution of the United States?
Yeah,
I
this
don't
is
know.
unbelievable.
I have to respond by saying again, I have brilliant lawyers that work for me, and they are going to obviously follow what the Supreme Court said. What you said is not what I heard the Supreme Court said. They haven't.
So I don't know. I don't know if he has to.
Well, I mean, it's in the line, right? Right after state your name.
But he didn't
I
put-
state your name.
He didn't put his hand on the Bible, though. so that's the big conspiracy that's going on right now, that he didn't put his hand on the Bible this time. So he's like, haha, gotcha. Don't have to follow the Constitution.
Well, you don't have, that's like, the Bible's not like a part saying that you have to put your
Nope.
hand on the
Yeah.
Bible, right?
Yeah.
They actually, when we going to do our, it's the photo op. I don't put my hand on the Bible. Like when we take our oath, when we get sworn in, they don't have 435 Bibles out there for everybody to hold, or a Quran, or the Torah, depending on your religion, or I don't know what you would do, or maybe a copy of the Constitution, right? If you're, agnostic.
Constitution. Yeah.
But so that's not actually part of the requirement, right? But it is, I don't know, maybe that's in his mind, like, oh, I'm not going to put my hand on the Bible, so I don't have to do what it says. But the thing is, right, he doesn't care about the law. He doesn't care about the Constitution. To me, the most frightening thing that I've heard, out of all the things that he said, right, it's, and you're I think we are kind of seeing it play out right now, right, is when he was at the White House, he had all the governors there. He called out like the governor of Maine, like, you going to go along with us on this? Meaning the transgenders in sports, in which she said, we're going to follow the law, right? And what did he say? We are the law, meaning like him, right? We are the law. And he's not the law, but that is the thing, right? And that is this kind of mentality that he's going through, that somehow these executive orders override the law of the United States, and they don't. And that is a dangerous, I think, path to be going down for the president of the United States to say, I am the law. Because he's not. He is there to enforce. He's the executive branch. You know, it's Congress passes the laws, the executive branch enforces the laws, and the Supreme Court interprets the laws. That is our check and balances, and he is going down a dangerous path to kind of say, nope, I am the law, and whatever I say goes, and that is the law.
That's the problem, though, right?
It is. It is the
because
problem.
who enforces the law then? If he's the one who's supposed to be enforcing it and no one else does,
Yeah.
like it just seems to me like there is some kind of error in the way our country was founded or our Constitution was written
It's
that
been
allows
working for
this
249
to happen.
years.
But
Actually, let me take that back. It's been working. I don't want to feel like doing the quick math, right? But it's been working since 1789 when George Washington kind of took his oath to become
Sure.
the president of the
Sure.
United States under the Constitution. Because you got to remember, before that, we were under the Articles of Confederation.
But don't you think there's an element to the way our country has worked for a while that relies on norms over law? And I'll give you an example, which was before FDR had 4 terms, every president would serve 2 at most, and then they would step down.
Right.
And then after FDR, obviously, we put it into the Constitution because we realized, okay, actually, yeah, we probably should have laws for this. But
Well, it was Republicans who kind of forced that one down, right, and did that amendment because it was a Democratic president who served 4 terms, or actually got elected to 4 terms. He died at the beginning of his 4th term. But, so they're the ones, we can't allow that to happen again. So as soon as they got in power, they passed that amendment
sure,
to kind of they got ratified in order to do that.
sure. But I guess my point is,
But I know with Washington doing the 2 terms, who could have easily done a 3rd if he had wanted to.
yes,
It set the standard kind of going along.
it set standard and it set a level of respect for precedent and the way the president's job has been done going forward that has had a lot of lasting effect because it seems to me that every president until now has had a reverence for the way things are done. But actually, to me, it seems that maybe there's not anything that actually enforces the president to follow orders from a court. It's just something he did because it was the right thing to do. But this doesn't seem to matter to this president. So then what do you do?
Well, that's the thing, right? So the Constitution does leave you those options, right? Which obviously the biggest one is that he's not holding up his things, right, to protect and defend the Constitution. And so there's only one way to remove the president, right? It's through
You can
impeachment,
impeach him, yeah.
right? But again, that's not going to happen in this Congress. So
Yeah, another caveat that I want to throw in the mix here, and I'm interested in your thoughts because I don't think we've talked about it on the show, is USA versus Trump, or maybe it was Trump versus USA, the Supreme Court case that basically said, like, the president has immunity at all times from the law. So at that point, like, is Trump, again, I don't agree with anything that he's doing, but is he even wrong? Is he technically wrong in saying, I am the law? The Supreme Court themselves basically said that he is the law.
Well, yeah. I mean, he said he's immune from committing crimes, so you can't basically arrest a president. And this is the thing. It wasn't even a crime that he had committed or anything during his thing. It was like stuff afterwards, right, that they were trying to go and say, well, all these things that he was being sued for and being tried for were things that happened before he became president. Right, especially even the Stormy Daniels thing. He wasn't in office yet when he made that payoff tour, but they were crying that, well, he was the president, so therefore he's immune from these crimes. But I mean, I think that goes back to Max's point, right? We kind of thought at that point the Supreme Court was, the thing to worry about because they made that decision. Now, with the 6-3 majority, I think if it was a Democratic president in office right now that was making that argument, would they have kind of sided with him? I don't think they would have. And I think, obviously there are, and it's not the first time in our history, right? I think during the Civil War, right, there were still kind of Southern judges. They still had like a majority of Southern judges on the Supreme Court that were always going against like what Lincoln was trying to do, right? And Lincoln kind of took powers into his hands.
He did that. FDR
you know, to kind of
threatened
do
to
it, right?
pack the courts.
I know FDR wanted to, which, you know, it's not really kind of set, right? There's nothing in the Constitution that says it has to be 9, and it's been different things. So he wanted to create it, I think, take it up to 13 or something.
I think Biden should have done it.
And then, see, but I think when you kind of do that, then it just becomes like, okay, well, the next guy's going to add 2 more people, right? And appoint 2 more Supreme Court. That's when it's a Republican, and it's just going to go bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't necessarily agree with those kind of theories, right? And just, I know they always talk about the filibuster too. Well, we got to get rid of the filibuster. I'm not in the Senate; those are their rules. But you know, it's. I will say one of the things that kind of made it easier for McConnell to do what he was able to do by stacking the courts when he was there was they kind of took away. They changed the rules in the Senate to say that, you don't need cloture. So therefore, if just a simple majority, you could go and you could do the judges, right? Where they didn't have that before, and it allowed Democrats to kind of do it when they were in the majority because they were the ones who made that decision to get rid of that, so they could put judges up there and get them confirmed with a simple majority. And then, guess what? Now the Republicans are in charge, and they did the same damn thing.
Yeah.
And it allowed them to kind of, that was all he focused on, really. He didn't care about passing laws. His thing was all about how can I stack the courts with conservative judges, because that's going to make the biggest impact on the United States to kind of keep the way things that I think they should be kind of going into the future.
Yeah. And on that point, I think that's kind of also going into what we were getting at earlier with the Democratic Party is, I don't know if packing the court is the right option. I don't know if Joe Biden should have done it. I'm not going to speak on it because I haven't looked into it as much. But what I do know is that if the opportunity would have been there for Republicans to do it, they would have done it. And I think that this is a situation that Democrats find themselves a lot in, where they play nice and then get pushed and they get.
Well, they don't
around.
need to stack the court now, right? It's like
because they did it another way. That was going to be my point.
Yeah.
Instead of stacking the court, they did it. Oh, okay. Well, we played within the system. But even then, they still lied. They said, "Oh, well, we're not going to let Obama put in his Supreme Court justice, and we're not going to do the same in the future."
Right.
But when the future came, guess who was the big hypocrites and who looked like they weren't fighting hard enough? I think that's definitely something that always crosses my mind too. Because I agree. I'm like, well, if we pack the courts now, the next president is going to come in and do it. But it almost seems like, regardless, Republicans end up getting their way, and that, I think, sucks. It really does.
Well, I think it's because we play by the rules.
I agree. Yeah,
right?
I would agree.
We play by the rules, which you're supposed to do, right? I think we follow the law. We do. Joe Biden wasn't out there saying like, "I am the law." I am going to do this, right? And he kind of followed. If the Supreme Court came with a decision, it's like, okay, that's the law of the land. I took the oath to uphold and defend the Constitution, and so I am going to do what the court say, right? And everybody else kind of did that before him, but I think we're kind of dealing with a different situation right there. Who doesn't really care about the law? Who's more about kind of enriching himself? Doesn't really care about ethics because, when I was in the administration. There were a lot of things, stocks, bonds, things that we couldn't buy, couldn't invest in but they don't have that same thing, right? This guy's like selling coins and they're taking profits from it, from his damn meme coins.
It's actually one of the most horrific and corrupt stories that doesn't get enough attention as it should because of everything else that he bombards the airwaves yet. I mean, we're talking about a billionaire becoming extraordinarily even more wealthy off of his own supporters, off of a meme coin.
I mean, he's taking it to a different level, right? It's like, he had the Trump Hotel in D.C., right? And if you knew you wanted during the first administration, if you wanted to get favor with him or to get in his good side, we're going to book an event at the Trump Hotel. We'll do it in the Trump ballroom, and all the foreign countries knew that too, right? When they came, they They were staying putting their dignitaries up at the Trump Hotel, or they were having an event at the Trump Hotel, and that's it. But now he's kind of taken to a very much larger extreme, right? Kind of doing with these coins, these meme coins, kind of selling, which are worthless.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter whether they're worthless or anything, right? Because they're making money with the. Just by buying them, they are taking a cut and a percentage off of that, and it's lining his pockets. And he doesn't care if they go up or down, because either way, he's making money off them.
Yeah, certainly. Here, the producer talking, I just had to chime in here. Going back to the conversation earlier about, the Democratic Party and their popularity, as, a young person, I wish that the Democratic Party had some of the fight and the energy that Trump has to, like you guys are saying, for pure corruption, self-enrichment, scamming the American people, frankly destroying this country, that, I wish the Democrats had the same fight for these issues that are popular. They're trying to help the American people, raising the minimum wage with the, the bill that you're talking about proposing. Frankly, as a young person, that's the kind of energy that I want from the Democratic Party for helping the American people that the Republicans have for screwing the American people over and lining their own pockets.
Yeah, on the Trump coin thing, I was actually doing a paper on the Citizens United case, and I was looking into the Trump coin because it's very, very interesting. He made $2.9 billion off of the Trump coin. It would take the average American 1,600. Let me get this number right. It would take 1,686 lifetimes. You would have to exist on this planet for 1,686 times. Be born, start to finish, to be able to accumulate the amount of wealth that he just did in the matter of 2 weeks.
Yeah.
At the same time, his sons just closed 3 deals with Saudi Arabia. And kind of to Max's point, this is fraud. This is illegal bribery. The coins aren't worthless. The coins are worth a lot. They're worth getting a trial dropped against you. They're worth getting a piece of legislation that you want.
Well, that's what people are buying the coins, right? It's because they know it's the same thing. It's the last time it was staying at his hotel, booking a party. This time it's buying the coin.
Yeah, and they know it. And I think that Senator Chris Murphy just introduced a piece of legislation called the meme legislation that's going to ban supposedly these cryptocurrencies. I think that's the type of thing. Again, and this could be a naive take, but I feel like that's one of those things where like the Democrats just have to hop on that. Like this is bribery. This is corruption. There is no question about it. It's quid pro quo.
Yeah.
It's the definition of you give me this, and I'll give you that. And I think that a problem is the media coverage, the way that the media decides to focus on other issues. I would definitely give that to the Democratic Party, but definitely just hitting this issue in particular to me is just massive because it's disgusting. I can't find a better word for it than bribery and literal corruption, blatant corruption.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most corrupt president to ever exist. Yeah.
Shane called him Bane for white collar criminals.
The Bane for white collar criminals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bane for other criminals too. Bane for insurrectionists. My next door neighbor was on house arrest after the January 6th. So I'm from Orange County, California. My next door neighbor was a local right wing activist in the area during COVID. He kind of sprang up when we had the lockdowns and started protesting everything that was going on there. I actually did an interview with him one time after he burned a bunch of masks on the beach in response to Newsom's curfew. And I actually asked him, I'm like, what's the goal of your guys' protests and organization? He's like, we want to institute a new just and peaceful government in this country, which made me realize that when the people that were there on January 6th, they weren't kidding that their goal was to overthrow the government. But anyway, he was there. I saw pictures of him a few weeks later. I wake up at 6 a.m. It's the FBI banging down the door, and they take away his guns and his electronics. And then a few months later, I see he's federally indicted, and then put on house arrest. And Trump ended up
Pardoning him.
Yeah, he ended up pardoning him, and he's. No, I mean, he got off kind of scot-free anyway. He listened to his lawyers and testified. But the point is, a guy like that who's giving speeches on the Supreme Court, how blood must be spilled to protect our democracy. Like, what are you referring to? And it's not just white collar criminals, right? It's people like that Trump is in favor of.
Yeah, no, I mean that was just another example, I think, of the hypocrisy of this administration, right? The fact that he. There was a guy. Who's that one senator?
Tom Cotton?
No. The guy always talks stuff. Can't think of his name right now. He's from Alabama.
Oh, the guy I know who you're talking about. From Louisiana, John Kennedy. The guy with the southern accent?
No. It's a younger guy. No. I can't think of it. But anyway, there was a thing online that I saw, right, where he's kind of like, oh, these were just peaceful protesters or peaceful, they're kind of coming to see the Capitol, but yet he was in the House at the time, and they have pictures of him kind of, down there kind of taking, cover from everything that was going on. Yeah, it's so peaceful. You were just right there kind of, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Is there anything else we have to talk about today besides just how awful this administration is? I know, that's kind of been our focus this time. I know we don't always do that, but maybe it's good for us to do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Dodgers are playing better.
yeah. You know what? They've got a 6.67 winning percentage right now. It's insane.
Yeah.
The Yankees played the Padres last night, though.
Yeah.
And they won. They scored 10 runs in the bottom of the 7th inning.
Did you stay up and watch it?
I don't
because
pay
they're playing
for,
in San Diego right now, right?
No, they're playing at Yankee Stadium.
Oh, they are. Okay.
I don't have access to the games, but we also have a player who's batting over 400 on May 7th today. Aaron Judge. That's pretty exciting. But our new closer, Devin Williams, can't finish a game for the life of him. So we've actually lost like 4 more games than we should have.
Mm-hmm.
But the Dodgers pitching staff is great. Got Yamamoto looks like a Cy Young Award winner.
Yeah, Yamamoto's pitching really good. But they got a lot of injuries right now though too. So you just gotta get through there right now.
You playing in the Congressional Baseball Game?
I am. So you guys should go. It's June 11th.
What position they gonna have you at for the Dems?
So I've been practicing at first base.
Okay.
Yeah.
When's you ever swung a baseball bat against a live pitching anytime recently?
We've been practicing, so we actually take this game very seriously.
I'm sure.
So, so we I had a briefing today that I couldn't go on for one of my subcommittees, so I didn't go to practice today because the briefing was at 8:00. But we had practice Tuesday. We'll have practice tomorrow. We come back, after the weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday. It's a we're doing a scrimmage Tuesday night. So
I did not know there was
we did a scrimmage
this
last
amount
week.
of prep work for the Congressional Baseball Game.
For one game.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a lot of practice going on.
Under the bright lights at Nationals Park, I guess it makes sense.
It is. So I played in the game in 2019. It was canceled in 2020. But it is actually really cool to kind of be out there.
I'm sure.
To I've been on Dodger Stadium at times. I've done things where they've let me kind of go out and because I'm a season ticket holder, right? So
sure.
they have things where they let you come out and doing batting practice on the field and stuff, but you can't go. But here, when you're playing the game, it's like you're like on the field. It's like there, you're playing there. It's everything. It's a real game on a major league field, and it is. The ground balls are beautiful, coming at you, man. No bad hops.
Oh, that infield dirt, it's trimmed perfectly.
Yeah.
I remember the coolest thing, every base, even when I was a kid, I would feel this, and I still feel this now. But the coolest part about going to a baseball game is just looking out and seeing the field and how perfect it looks. That was always my favorite part.
Yeah.
I would get to the gate and get my tickets, and I would try and look through the opening as fast as I can to see the field. It's just, and seeing it up close, I'm sure is even cooler. But yeah.
Do y'all have jerseys? Is there a theme jersey?
So the Republicans have they wear a uniform. So we've kind of done it, and I think we're going to continue this way. We did actually order some, jerseys, but I think our decision is going to be to wear a jersey of or a uniform, I should say, a uniform of something that represents our district. So, last time I represented Cal State Fullerton, so I wore the Cal State Fullerton baseball because they have actually a very good, historically a good baseball program.
They do, yeah.
So this time around, I'm going to wear the jersey of Almani High School, which is a high school in my district.
Gotcha.
So, and that's kind of how everybody's kind of really kind of done it.
That's nice. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. That's definitely a good I think image to put out there. You know that you're representing your constituents united on one team, representing so many different.
Azusa Pacific College, that's in your district, right?
It is.
Yeah, I played a little bit of high school baseball. I had a guy who ended up committing there, playing on the baseball team as a pitcher. He's actually in the Yankees organization now. But anyway, it's a side note.
I was actually in 2020. I had we had a little league in my district. I think it was that won for the I think for the 14 and 15-year-old age group had won the little league or had won the World Series for that age group at 14 and 15 years old.
The Little League World Series.
Yeah, not the one you see on TV.
Right, they
those
have
are
like the older ones.
They have the older group, right? But they had won the World Series there, the Little League World Series for 14 and 15-year-olds. And I was actually going to wear their jersey the following year.
Oh, wow.
That the game got canceled. Yeah.